I've got to normalize me data, you say. Then you're telling me it's denormalized. What is it? Is it normal? Is it denormal? What does denormal even mean, man? Alright, lads and lasses, welcome along. Weekend work ready for yous now, eh? I think this is a topic we're going to keep coming back to it. It's a big one that we're going to cover. Both the videos this week are going to cover it, just from different aspects. So our M video, the one we're doing now, is going to look at that, and the one we're going to do for DAX is going to look at it from a DAX perspective. M and normalization of your data. Every action that you do in M is going to normalize your data to an extent, right? And the whole point of normalizing your data is always the same, right? What we want is to be able, if we zoom in here, get that list of tables, get a decent list of tables that you're going to use and build your data model from. Okay, so this really straddles both sides. No matter what you want to say with it, no matter what you're going to do, it straddles everything that you're going to do. So we know now that we're going to have to think through with data and understand, right, what is it going to do? How's it going to shape? How's it going to fit together? And the first place we start doing that is, of course, in M. So when we pull through what data in M, you'll get something like this, right? Now, this New York taxi data, if you remember, if you've watched the video series, if you didn't, when you're ready, I'd recommend having a watch of it, right? This is the end result, right? 325 odd million rows of data in it. Plenty of data, lots of stuff to shuffle. What you're always going to start seeing as you get used to looking at Power BI queries is that some of them are hidden, right? So if we zoom in here, again, so if we zoom in, you'll see on the left-hand side where we've got all our queries, we ignore the bit at the top, right? If you get anything like this at the top, like this transform file for query one, right? Query helper, helper queries, right? You can ignore those. Those are generally created by the system as part of a function development cycle. So if they stop working, it's not necessarily an issue. There'd be something that's happened. The goal of this, though, was to pull all these taxi records together. Yeah, so we've got all the taxi records from the years that they've come through, whether they're from yellow or green, and actually then all that gets pulled together into this table here. Okay, that's one of the things you do, right? You'll see a lot of this happen. The other thing we've done is I was looking at the distances and they were just odd, right? So what we've done is we've combined combinations of pickup points and drop-off locations. This was all part of it. The goal here, right, and the reason for this table is it's something you need to understand about Power BI. So you hear a lot of people talk about, oh, we've got like 325 million rows of data. Aren't I amazing? Right? I can't think who ever said that, right? That's kind of rubbish in terms of in Power BI speak. Power BI works by trying to compress your columns. Okay, so it looks and sees where have we got uniform values within the columns that we can then say, well, these are going to be a number, right? And then I just store what that number means somewhere else, right? Hey, works. Does a great job, I have to say. We've got this 325 million row data set down to under a gigabyte, so yeah, it works. The upshot of it is, if we look at the main table that we're looking at, yeah, the main table that we needed, you can see that it's not very wide, okay? And that is where you start to think through, right, this is what Power BI is really all about. You need to be thinking in terms of what's your data, so what's actually going in the columns. So you see in here, we've got the pickup dates and the drop-off dates, got rid of the time components, just got the dates. You'll also see I've got the pickup and drop-off time of day. So we've got the actual time of day as a number which relates back to a time of day lookup. Realistically, they're both going to be the same most of the time. What that means, we could have got rid of one of these. Save us a load of hassle. The nice thing with these is, if you look at them, there's only 8 values. Okay, 1 to 8. So I've broken down a day or a time value down to just eight options. We could go further and say, well, I want an hour 24. I want an hour every hour. Was it midnight and 1? Was it between 1 and 2? Right? You could do all that, and it's still going to be more efficient than putting the hours and minutes in, because you're going to have less unique values. Yeah, so you can have more that are shared, so they can be compressed. Looking at the data, and actually when I went through and had a look at the Vertipack file, a big reason for getting rid of the distance was shocking. It was so spread out that it was just like a really expensive column. And expensive columns is something that you'll hear people talking about when we look at Power BI and actually what we're doing. So how about, I've shown you this bit, let's jump in, export this in Vertipack, and then we can load it up in Vertipack and see exactly what I mean. Yeah. So to do that, all you need to do is go back to your main Power BI window. And then from here, what we need to do is go to external tools, and we're going to use DAX Studio. So you've got to have DAX Studio installed. If you haven't got DAX Studio, get it. Right? It's well worth it. Okay. Once you're here in DAX Studio, right, what we need to do is scan in and actually have a look at the figures for it. So we can do that. We can actually look to view the metrics. Right, and this is going to show me the information that we've got within our column already. Right, so we can see, all right, here's where we've got problems. But what we can see if we look at the New York taxis here is if we zoom in again, right, you can see this data column, can't you? Data. Right, so this is kind of where we're starting to talk about the size of this column, of this table, right, and actually how much space is being taken up from it. So if I get rid of my face again, yeah, you can see 99% of the database, which is what a Power BI data model is behind the scenes, is taken up by that table. And looking into it, the total amount, so the cost is actually the highest variant. That's the most expensive column in it. So we've managed to go through using normalization and denormalization techniques to drop those values right down. And it's this total amount that's taken up effectively 30% of our database. Okay, it's not to say it's the only one. We've got like tip amount is bad, the drop off ID is bad, so again we could potentially look at that, but we need the drop off and the pickup locations to get a good understanding of actually what's going on. That's key. So being able to understand and look through and say, right, where is my data model inefficient? Where have I got problems? And then look to say, well, how can I reshape it? Is a big skill, and that's a piece that really you need to be starting to think through as you're becoming more literate in Power BI. So here we are, right? This is the folder that I've used. This is kind of all the artifacts for this data set that went through. What you can see, right, here, and this is it's a really important one for you to understand, is this here was the first stab that I put in at putting in all that data, yeah? Putting in everything from 2017, right? Afterwards, I went and normalized it, sorted out, reset a lot of the stuff in it, okay? And it came back, we got it down to 1.1, oh sorry, 1,000, yeah, just under a gigabyte. Shape of data is key. So have a think through that, work out what you want to do with it, right? But make sure before you start bringing in lots of data and, saying, oh, I'm just going to be this big wide spreadsheet with like 200 columns because I need all 200 of them. You won't, right? You'll probably use 10 of them at most, right? What you can do though is look at where have we got something that could become a dimension, okay? And once we start talking about facts and dimensions, that's when you want to go and watch the tax video, okay? Champion. Take care, right? Have a great weekend. Make sure you have a look and have a think through this data set, yeah? Have a great weekend. Cheers. Ta-da.